I referred to number 8 as the MIA issue. Of course, MIA stands for Missing in Action. And the reason I said that is there are so very few churches, even large churches, that have someone with this role. Now, for lack of better words, I'm going to refer to the person as an assimilation director. Basically, essentially, all this means is that there is someone who is overall in charge of the assimilation process. Most churches do not have such a person. Why? Because there's overlap in so many areas. Think about it for a moment. You have groups that are assimilating factors. Well, you obviously, most of the time, have someone responsible for the groups or Sunday school. You have the worship event. You have a worship leader, and that person is responsible for that aspect of it. You may have a ministry leader of some kind, and that person's responsible for ministry. You may have a welcoming team leader, which is not unusual. That person's responsible for that. And then you start talking about an assimilation director, again, my choice of a title, and you're just saying, well, we've got people doing this and this and this, but here's what's the reality. You don't have them doing those roles for the sake of assimilation. And so I encourage churches to have an assimilation director. This is a checklist item that I think could really enhance and keep assimilation ever before you as a leader and the rest of the congregation. Now, to be certain, this is more of a role than a title. A title may be necessary just to recognize the person within the context of his or her role, but this is more of a role, someone that is keeping before them how many ways do we have that we can assimilate people better. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but some of you might have. Have you ever heard about the hooks as a way to do evangelism? Well, the hooks refer to different ways to do evangelism. Whether you like the metaphor or not, it really is, if you do evangelism in multiple ways, there may be some opportunities to get someone here, to reach someone with the gospel here, to have a gospel conversation here. There are different ways to connect with people. It's the same thing with assimilation. There are different ways to assimilate folks. And so when you have someone who is an assimilation director, that person is constantly looking at it through the lens of closing the back door, of assimilating people into the church. Hear me well on this. You may think that I'm only talking to large churches when I talk about getting an assimilation director, but this is a paid or a volunteer position. In fact, I would suggest that most churches that have anything close to this, most do not, this would be more of a volunteer position. This is someone that is looking out for all the opportunities to assimilate people. But here's the reality. This particular role is hardly given any thought in most churches. Okay, what does an assimilation director do? Or whatever the title may be. An assimilation director coordinates, measures, and recommends all the sticky factors. Once again, and I'll use another word for sticky this time so we can use one of the synonyms, the assimilation director coordinates, measures, and recommends all the sticky factors or all the assimilation factors. Let's look at each of these major 3 words in one by one. First of all, coordinates. An assimilation ministry is something that has disparate parts to it. So an assimilation director is looking to make certain that all of those assimilation factors are in full stride. Is the group system going just fine? That's one of the big assimilation issues. So that person works with the groups, the groups director, whatever the position may be. It may be actually a paid staff member. How about worship visibility? This person may work with the worship leader to say, are we giving enough opportunities for people to have visibility on the platform in the worship service? This person may work with the welcome team director. Over all the church, this person is looking to open up as many doors so the back door can be closed. Looking for opportunities to get people into places where they will be greater assimilated. So one of the things this person does is coordinate. the challenge is this person usually doesn't have responsibility for any one area, but coordination of many areas. Also, an assimilation director can measure. Now, this is a challenge, but one thing an assimilation director can do, if that person is really on top of it, is to go to the entire membership roll, the active membership roll, and see who is doing what and who is involved in what. And there are lots of software out there. This is not something that you have to create manually. There's good systems. There's good church management software that can do this. And you can just look and say, this person is in 3 different sticky factors. So she is really probably going to assimilate in church. This one was in groups, but is no longer in groups. We need to check and see what happened and can work with the groups director or even get involved in ministry or something of that nature. They're constantly measuring or watching to see how many people and what percentage and individually what everyone is doing in order to be greater assimilated into the church. This person also recommends. Now, again, a coordinating position is a disadvantage because it has no authority. It just has coordination. So when you begin to look at this position, they cannot go to the theoretically, they cannot go to the person who leads the group ministry and say, you've got to do this, or to the worship leader and say, this is what I need you to do it right away. But this person has to have good emotional intelligence and be able to go to this person and say, hey, have you considered this? Have you tried to look at the possibility of getting more people involved on the welcome team, because it's really causing the people that are serving with you right now to stick. And the more we can get involved, the better it would be. Have you considered these things? Now, my guess is that many of you who are going through this checklist have not heard of the assimilation director position or anything similar to it. If so, that's not unusual. You are in one of many who have not done anything to try to have a coordinating position with this. The question I would then ask is, why are we neglecting it? Why do we see fewer and fewer of these people who actually are holding this coordinating position? Well, first of all, most churches don't see the connection. Most churches see a welcome ministry as primarily just a welcome, not to assimilate. Most people see a small groups ministry or a groups ministry as to learn or to have community, not to assimilate. Rarely does someone see a person who is visible in the worship service as an assimilation issue. They see it as a worship issue. We are not connecting the dots that so many things of which we are already involved not only carry out a primary purpose, such as the welcoming team, they also carry out a secondary but nearly as important purpose, one of assimilation. Why else are we not seeing more and more assimilation directors? I would call it the tyranny of the urgent. We're so busy just making the machine go. We're so busy just making sure that, to continue a different kind of metaphor, that we're putting pegs in holes, whether they're round or square. We're so certain that we're filling all the blanks in, that we're keeping the activities in motion, that we don't step back enough to say, what are we doing here? Is it really making a difference? We're too busy doing the minutia to focus on the major. Or put it another way, we're majoring on minors instead of majoring on majors. And many times we have the opportunity to look at the overall picture. We'll see a lot of gaps, which means a lot of possibilities for better assimilation. But here is just a really encouraging thing. If you are an assimilation director, obviously there will be moments of challenge, of frustration, trying to work with disparate groups within the church. But here is part of the challenge. Not only do you work with disparate groups, but that challenge leads to an opportunity. And that opportunity is this. You don't have to have major changes. You don't have to have a major strategy or a major initiative in order to see assimilation more effective. One of the good things about assimilation is if you go down this checklist, you can check off 1 or 2, and assimilation will be more powerful in the church. So if you're ever considering getting an assimilation director, or if you think you might be an assimilation director, understand that incremental change is powerful, and you have the ability to just do a few things that can have a major impact. Yeah, the reality of it is this type of position, this type of person is missing in action in most churches. But the opportunity is if we get one person that can just give a little time, 3 or 4 hours a week, it would be a great amount of time to looking at the overall scope of this. We can see the back door close, the sticky factor enhance, and an assimilation take place within the church. We will continue this with also a lesser known assimilation factor, and it is the issue of powerful prayer. We'll be coming back to that in checklist item number 9.